Okay, Wayne, how's your day going so far?
Yeah, it's pretty good. This is actually my second interview of the day about the film, so it's good to sort of get into the groove with that. Just getting used to talking about it a bit more. Well, not that I haven't done that a million times in the last 2 years. So yeah, it's
Does it feel surreal where the point you're at now? Like from the point where you had started writing?
yeah. I think it's all a bit of a blur, really. I think it's just kind of you go in. There's a lot that goes into the various stages of it, and I've sort of been fighting for this film, almost solo a lot of the time to start off with, and then sort of, to get it to the point of pre-production and then shooting it, and then it's you get something physically there, and then it's shaping it into the film, and then you've got the whole process of selling it, and then this next part now, which is when people start to see it, and you have that fun part of the anxiety of worrying if people are going to like it or feel the way that you do about it. So yeah, it's a journey.
So you, with Wolf Garden, um, is this the most extensive that you've done um, a film of where you writer, director, producer, and an actor?
Yeah, I've sort of done the same thing on a couple of short films and a trailer, but I think it's kind of the step up is pretty big, to be honest. And I think with this, when you're doing something like this, it's your passion project, it's your thing. You kind of you do it, you put everything into it to make it happen. So it's literally taken over my life for the last few years, and it's what people say, the sacrifices you make to try and make your dreams happen, to make things move forward. It is what it is. It's a tough one, but it's been you learn a lot on the journey. It's not always fun. A lot of it is very, very stressful, but it's having something physical at the end of it to show people and to put out to the world.
Yeah, and now you're in interviews about
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So, what is, can you remind me of the release date for Wolf Garden before we forget?
The US release date is the 28th of February.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting it confused with something else.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, end of the month. You're probably pretty excited it's coming up. Um, Time flies, man. It still feels like it's 2020.
Well, I guess that's what lockdown has done for us, isn't it? It's all these strange, very strange times, and it's how this film was born. It's kind of like out of lockdown. It's like, what can you do? What can you do in the time you've got? How can you make the most of it? What can you try and shape something out of all that sort of alone time? Time sitting in a flat or wherever people are. So yeah, that's how it was born.
Was the movie always called Wolf Garden, or when you sat down to write it, did you have a different title in mind at all?
That's a good question, actually. I'm trying to think. I think actually it probably. I mean, it's something that popped into my head. I mean, it's kind of yeah. I think it's always been called that. Actually, I can't remember calling it anything differently. To be honest, I had a few different ideas on what the film was going to be initially. So all so you get it. Yeah, no, I had a few different ideas on what sort of film I was going to make to start off with, and then when the werewolf concept kind of took hold, and yeah, I think it's always been called Wolf Garden. I've always kind of liked that as a title. I think it's kind of a little bit different, a little bit unusual. So I think it works. I always have trouble with titles as a writer as well. I'm never great at grabbing a title. So when I get one, I stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it's the type of title that you would get mixed up with anything else. So that's a pretty good landing there. Now, with all the hats that you wear for this, is there a favorite that you have, whether it's acting or when you were writing it or directing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the different parts of it, you know, there's stuff to enjoy and stuff that causes you a lot of stress. I mean, I've always been an actor first and foremost. That's my, you know, my original one true love kind of thing. Um, but I think really it's like in the last few years since I've been directing, you realize it's kind of like there's something in that it's just a different thing to acting. You know, the directing side, you're shaping the whole world, and as an actor, you just sort of shaping the one character yourself and what you're bringing to it. Whereas with directing, it's everything in the frame, it's everything that happens. So it's you know, I think they're both equally rewarding in that, you know, when you're acting and you get that feeling and you feel like you have that little moment where something feels really real and natural and good. That's a special feeling. But also, you know, being in the editing suite when you see your film coming together, this world shaping together, that's a pretty special feeling as well. So it's kind of maybe joint.
Do you remember what the first like spark was that gave you the idea for this particular story?
I think really it was um, the way it kind of happened was we had another film we were going to shoot actually in March 2020. So it was we were 2 weeks away from filming when essentially when we had to make a decision because the COVID thing was getting worse. I think people were starting to go nuts for toilet rolls and stuff like that. So you know there was just this feeling that things were only going to sort of get worse with it all. So we had to make the decision to pull the plug, and then it was kind of, you know, that decision was vindicated when things did go south, and we didn't spend all our money just to shut a film down. So I had time to write scripts, and I started developing something that would be more it would be more appropriate shooting in one location, trying to shoot around the sort of issues that we were facing. And yeah, this sort of isolation idea came into it, and there was a few sort of things floating around. I'd written another sort of, I'd made a short film that was kind of, yeah, a similar sort of concept. But you know, I think horrors. I'm always drawn to horror. I've always been a big fan of horror, so I think doing that, it was. I wanted to. I've always wanted to do a werewolf movie. I mean, I've always loved the werewolf genre. And I think it's trying to find a way to do something a bit different, trying to find a new angle to go at it with, just something a bit different. Because I think with this one, I mean, I didn't want it to just be sort of, you know, like a guy running around in a wolf suit kind of thing. You know, it's just a sort of it's not, you know, it's not a monster movie. It's more of a psychological suspense film, and I hopefully that's something a bit different and a bit new. I mean, I know there's always things have always been done before in some way, shape, or form. But I think with this, it was just trying to come at things from a slightly different angle, the romantic tragedy element to it as well. So yeah, that was it all just came out of the sort of the situation of lockdown, I guess, really.
So when you are acting and directing at the same time, is there any specific part of that that's difficult for you, or does it kind of seem more easy because you're in the scene?
It's it's kind of having like I guess almost a switch kind of thing, being able to switch between the two. And I think that's the thing about you know, trying to act and direct. And I think having done this film now, I've sort of learned, you know, the strengths and the weaknesses of doing it, sort of how I would do things differently. I mean, I think it's a doable thing. I mean, I don't think it's something that you could say was impossible to do or something that I struggled with. I mean, there was certain times when things could have been done differently, and obviously you're working on a low budget, you're sort of trying to do everything as quickly as possible. So there's definitely ways around it, but I think all in all, you know, I enjoy doing both things, and I think as long as you plan things, I think as a director, it's all about the planning. You really prep, and myself and the director of photography, we spent a lot of time going through storyboards and working out shot lists and how we wanted to establish the scenes. And then, of course, having the rehearsals. We didn't have a lot of rehearsals, but again, I cast actors that I knew could deliver. You know, this is the importance of casting the right actors. They just get it. You know, both my other my other co-stars in the film.
Yeah, I think Sean said she had known you from a movie a couple of years ago, or from something a couple of years ago. So
Yeah, no, she actually auditioned. She auditioned for the previous film, funnily enough. So I've met with Sean before, and it was like yeah, no, I mean it was all of it. I think was, especially with Sean, I think there was a nice chemistry there. It was just there was a good energy on screen, and it makes life easier. I always think when you've got good actors around you, it helps you as an actor, but also as a director. You know, you cast the right person, and you don't really have to tell them so much what to do. You give them little notes and stuff like this. But as with Grant, he brought the visitor. He brought a really great energy to that role as well, and it was and with both of them, as I said, it just makes your life easier, and that's the importance of pre-planning everything and having the right cast and the right crew. There's just a lot of ways you can make your life a lot easier if you're doing multiple things on set.
so did you use any VFX for Wolf Garden, or was it all practical?
It was practical up until a scene right at the end. We have a little sort of a wolf. I won't give too much away, but we've obviously got a certain there's a bit of a werewolf transformation thing that happens towards the end. So that was there was a few shots in there, but I'm a big fan of practical effects. I like to keep things sort of, especially with the budget. I mean, of course, if you had the money, you'd throw, you'd throw quite a few more VFX and things and little bits and pieces in there to sort certain issues out. But really, I mean, I think as with all of it, when you've got a low budget, it makes you think more creatively. So you can't necessarily show a lot of stuff, but then it's a horror film. You don't want to show too much anyway. The best films are always sort of, they leave a lot to your imagination, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, that's suspense in it. So, were there ever any other titles that you had considered calling it, or was it Wolf Garden from jump?
Oh, as I said, as far as I can remember, it was always just that title, Wolf Garden. Yeah.
Um, Now, as far as the cast, you said you had worked with them before. Was there anybody in the crew that you hadn't worked with before that you feel like really like kind of got your vision and that you're probably gonna bring back like everybody in the crew behind the camera?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's always that it's kind of like always that pressure. I think when you're doing something like this, you bring people in and you try and bring in people you've worked with before because there's always that rapport there and you sort of know how they work. And always that pressure of when you're on set with someone new, you just never know what you're going to get. And I think that's always the way with indie. You're always going to have sort of a mixture of experienced people and people sort of newer to the game. And I think like I give so much credit to my director of photography, Ariel. He was, I mean, he came on board. He added so much to the project. I mean, literally, again, I kind of shared the project with him, and it was kind of like it was with him that we did a lot of the prep work, and just a lot of extra work, and a lot of him giving a lot of his time that he didn't have to, and I think that's one of the great things as well. A lot of people on this film, they bought into it, they kind of they believed in the film, and I think that's always the case on these low budget things. Is kind of people, you've got to get people who buy into the vision because there's not a lot of money there. It's all about doing things as quickly as possible and getting it done. But as I say, with Ariel, it was he was the star man for me. He really was. He made the film happen. He's also my second pair of eyes when I wasn't actually, when I was acting. He was able to
When you were in front of the camera.
exactly. He was the person I would trust to let me know if things were good.
So
because
were
there's
there any major differences between the script and the final product, whether they were something that somebody suggested or just a different idea that you had being in the shoes?
um, to be honest, I mean, I think aside from obviously trimming out little bits and pieces in the edit, it's kind of it's kind of followed a lot of the same stuff. We did have to cut some scenes out because we just didn't have the time to shoot them. There was footage that was supposed to be from like another place. There's always there's mentions to something that's happened previously in the film, and we were going to do some shots of that. But again, it kind of got to the point where we sort of looked at it, and once we'd edited a rough cut, it was making that decision. It's like, do we try and find some more money to shoot those extra scenes, or is it going to work as it is? And I kind of think I think as soon as you sort of take it away from the cottage and the countryside and put it like in London, in London, it takes away from what we've got. So, and I always think as well, audiences are smart. You don't need to spoon feed people everything that's happened and what's going on. And sometimes you don't know what's happened. So it's kind of, I think that mystery of it kind of works. And I think the film, aside from getting some clever shots in and some things working out really well, and they did. We were very, very lucky with how things did work out. There was so many things. Yeah, there's a lot of things that did go wrong, but when it came to the edit, sometimes we had one good take in there, like literally, and if we hadn't had that one good take, we were in trouble. But we got it, in places. So we really did get lucky. We did.
When you first started writing the script, did you have the idea in your mind that you were going to be the one playing the main character?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been a case because, as I said, I'm an actor first and foremost, and the idea from it has always been sort of. I think I started directing because I wanted to get my own vision up there, and I think as a writer, when you're working on these projects and the way I've done it, I think you try and write the characters, you kind of write to your strengths or the sort of the types you play kind of thing. So yeah, I mean that's what I tried to do. I always sort of print scripts because I'm an actor, and it's that also it's that I guess it's that quality control thing as well. It's kind of saying how can I showcase what I can do and be in something that I believe would be a good film, because actors we audition for a lot of things, and there's a lot of you have to even get a show reel together, you have to do a lot of bad short films and student films and all this, and you never really know how things are going to turn out. But when you're in charge of it yourself, you can at least sort of say, well, this is how I want it to look, and hopefully you're right about that. I mean, who knows?
So when you think about this film, or when you were writing it even, which character did you view the lens through? Was it through your character, or was it through the female, etc.?
Oh yeah, no, I think it was always William's story. It was always a story about grief and loss, and it's the sort of film I think you hope that an audience would come away from it thinking about, what would you do in that sort of situation. I mean, it's, as I said, it's meant as a romantic tragedy with the werewolf theme, but it's so yeah. I mean, I always wrote it as a guy who's dealing with this and sort of is gradually losing his mind, and there's all this stuff going on. Is it, but what's real? What is going on? I mean, when people are losing their mind, is what we see real? Is what we see just William's imagination all the way through? So it's trying to keep the audience guessing, I guess.
Okay. And so did you end up screening it at any festivals prior to getting it ready for release?
We haven't done any festivals as yet. I mean, we've got the US release coming up, UK release. I'm not sure exactly when that's happening, but we should be having a UK release not too long after. And with the rest of the world, it's just sort of that's being discussed at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I think it's any of the sort of opportunity to get it out there a bit more. I mean, I would like to do. I would have liked to have done a festival run, but it's just the way the timing worked out with it, with doing a deal on the distribution. Is just, you know, it didn't. I think as well with the film, we just kind of missed out on a few of the big festivals we probably would have gone for. So just,
Well,
you know,
and the pandemic's still up in the air, so you never know what's gonna happen.
yeah.
Um, do do you have any other films or any other projects that you would like to plug that you have coming up, or even that recently came out?
I wish I did, to be honest. I kind of I would say that I've got two projects that are kind of ready to go. So the thing with those is, as with all of it, it always comes down to the funding and getting those things moving. But I have been in several conversations about a couple of my other projects. So I've kind of got a slate, built up a slate of scripts over during lockdown. As I say, writing during lockdown. So I have got projects that are good to go, but it's just finding the right fit, finding the right home, and hopefully with this film releasing, is, you know, if we can generate the right sort of buzz, then hopefully that will mean that could help the next one, and it's always about the next one.
So you had mentioned that you always wanted to make a werewolf movie. Do you have the same type of thing for like anything with like vampires or any other monsters?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of I sort of I wouldn't say I was predominantly like horror. I would say, I mean, I kind of, you know, I love all movies. I mean, horror is my sort of, you know, horror is my go-to. And I think, you know, I will definitely be making a few more. I mean, obviously, uh, you know, probably I've always been a big fan of zombie movies. Yeah, you know, George A. Romero is like my number one. Dawn of the Dead's like my favorite movie, just about. So it's kind of, but you know, again, it's like with this film, it would have to be, I would have to come up with something for me that I would think would be different enough, because you know there's been you know a lot of zombie movies made, and there's a lot of great ones. You know, there's obviously The Walking Dead just finished, and The Last of Us has just started, and that's really great. So
Yeah.
I think I always try and it's not so much a gap in the market, but just trying to find something that's just a little bit, just trying to do something a little bit different that's not going to be too, you know, following the curve of everything else.
Yeah, with especially with Walking Dead having you know, they just finished, but they have 5 spin-off shows
Yeah.
that they're starting. So
So it's not actually finished, is it? Really, it's kind of like we're going to see more Walking Dead. Yeah.
yeah, I think they're trying to make that their own Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Um, are there any like horror characters in comics that you would like to work with?
In what, sorry?
Any like horror characters from comic books that you would like to work with, whether it be directing or acting as them yourself?
To be honest, I mean, I think really, I guess with anything, it would be about whether it would be the right fit, whether it would work. I mean, saying actually specifics, I've always kind of, because I do that, I kind of write my own projects, so I kind of think I like to sort of start from scratch with a project rather than, you know, working on something that's already established. So you know, creating from scratch, I think is the way I would like to do things, rather than maybe taking someone else's concept and playing with that. So I'd always try and do something original um, myself. So I think that would probably be, yeah, I guess that would be my answer to that one.
Okay. Last question. Do you have any socials that you would like fans to find you on?
Oh, well, just got obviously on Instagram and Facebook. We just got Wolf Garden feature film pages there. So if people want to check those out, they've sort of just constantly updating with you know, stills and information about the film. Like the trailer, obviously the trailer's released, but you know, different clips from the film will be releasing gradually before the release. Yeah, no. So just check out the Facebook and the Instagram page, I guess.
And then before we wrap, is there anything that I or other interviewers haven't asked you that you would like to share about the film?
Share about the film. don't think so. I mean, if there's anything else you can think of, it's I think we kind of covered it. But I'm happy, obviously, if you can think of anything else, yeah, I'm sure I'm happy to happy to have another go at answering.
Okay, well, I think that's our time, so I'm going to go ahead and wish you well.
Thank you very much, and to you as well.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.